Welcome to Unlocked. I'm Dr. Joel Swakowski. In this show, we explore how truth comes to life through real stories and real people. Today, I'm joined by Dom Vargas, aka Dom the Bomb. He's a young man who's just on fire to change the world. Really inspiring. I couldn't help but have him on. He's making such a great impact in every context that he steps into. So I thought you all might enjoy some inspiration for yourselves. And that's what this interview actually is. It absolutely is inspiring. So with that said, let's dive in. All right, I have Dom Vargas here with me, aka Dom the Bomb. Man, it's been incredible getting to know you the last couple of years. You are a young man with a lot of energy and a lot of passion and a lot of ambition. What's your deal, man?
I'm crazy. That's my deal.
Yeah. Yeah, man. So, I mean, I know you have quite the story, and I know right now you're one of the people in our community. You and I are members of the same church and
Yep.
know a lot of the same people. And yeah, you're one of these guys just operating at a really high level right now as far as the impact you're making in the world and in, just everybody that you run into. And I'm excited to hear more about how you got to the place you're at today,
Yes.
far back as you want to go, or, just
Sweet.
what's going on with
Yep.
Dom right now as to why and how are you operating at such an incredible level right now?
Yep. Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me, Dr. Joel. This is
Yeah.
an honor. And what I'd like to share is real quick with everyone is a high level of like how I got to this point. And really the last 5 years of my life, I've been on, a really awesome journey. And background wise, I wasn't necessarily raised in a religious household, just surrounded. But in 2019, I had this experience where I was on a path for the first, 20 years of my life to join the Air Force as an officer. And I had some good reasons, but there was also some, reasons tied into wanting to do that, such as I thought that was what was going to make me a man. And that was the only way I was going to earn respect in life and be able to make a name for myself, etc. But that life plan was essentially stripped from me in 2019. I was medically disqualified from being able to go through the ROTC program at the college that I was going to. And so at that time of my life, I remember thinking like, wow, like, what am I supposed to do? Like, who
The
even am
whole
I?
plan, the whole
Who?
plan for your
e-
whole life
e-
just was crumbled, huh?
Exactly. Exactly. And, up to this point, I've had some experiences with folks telling me like, oh, God is working through you, young man. And I would always say, no, he's not. He's not clocking in and out, and he's not here putting in this work and, all these things.
Yeah.
And I felt like that was a huge wake up call. Like, I really felt like that was God showing me, like, are you sure about that? Are you
Yeah.
sure I'm not in your life? So, a couple months later, I would meet John Linhart, and he kind of took me under his wing,
How'd you
showed
meet
me.
John?
I met John through LinkedIn, of all places. Our original source, if you really want to trace it back, would be a Colin Stevenson.
Okay.
So we ran in similar circles on LinkedIn, and I remember reading John's research for the mind and brain. And first thing I said was, have you tried to sell this to other schools? Because this is exactly what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
John taught me a lot of how to live life the right way. And it got to the point where I was like, where did you get this? How did you create this information? And looking back, I kind of felt like he was teasing me a bit, like, oh, like, I'll tell you when you're ready. Like, yeah, keep doing your thing. And then I finally backed him in the corner, like, tell me I need the secrets to life because I want to keep living like this.
Yeah.
And like that scene in Kung Fu Panda when Po asks his dad, tell me the secret to the noodles. And he reveals the scroll and he's like, there's nothing there. And he goes, it's love.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
John showed me everything he had created,
right.
discovered, was from the Bible. And so from that moment, this was in 2020, I knew like, wow, like, well, if that's the case, then that's what I want more of. And so since 2020, I've really been on this journey of every year progressing through what I believe now to be the plans for happiness I had laid out for myself. to this point now. So, real quick, those plans for happiness look like first being an officer in the Air Force, title, status, claim, traveling, etc. When that didn't work out, then it became all right, fine. I'll become a CEO by the ripe age of 23. Yeah, that's what I'll do.
All right.
And I'll work as much as I need to make that happen, even if it means working myself into literally the ground and becoming a robot, because it was going to be worth it. I'd be a CEO. It didn't happen, by the way, guys. And
Not a
then
CEO. No.
after that didn't work out, I was like, you know what? There's more to life than that. But oh, darn it, I worked so hard. I deserve to spoil myself. So then I had this plan of like material focus really was the thing. I'll get a house. I'll do the whole yes, I'm young and getting my stuff together plan, and then I'll spend money on things that literally had no um, real weight other than filling like childhood voids and stuff like that because I had money now. Woohoo, right? And then when I put that to rest, all the while there was a lady I was dating through all these years and learned a lot from that relationship. But there's some glaring issues within the relationship in terms of like where my focus was and would we really have a profitable marriage. But again, our plans for happiness are so strong. I did a lot of justifying for how the marriage could work out until I learned the type of marriage that I believe God wants us to have. And that was really a huge catalyst for me to take the final step I needed to really give up my plans for happiness. And we talk about this all the time at church. You've done plenty of teachings on how to do this and what that looks like. And I really felt like, oh yeah, I'm doing that. I'm
Yeah.
investing, I'm involved. I've given up my plan for happiness, but it was one of those things that kind of sneaks up on you. But when it finally was brought to the top of the what do you call it, the filtration system, I was like,
Yeah.
wow, now I'm at a point where I have a choice to make. Do I want to keep doing my 80 focus plan for happiness? And I can be happy, no doubt. Like I'll be happy, but now I know like what God wants for us, and this is experiencing even more joy and happiness than you would here.
Right.
But also, if you choose the 80 plan, I felt like now I'm literally telling God, I'll get to you when I'm done, which is what I'd been doing really the last 5 years in a way. So
And
that,
that's similar to what I did. I
yep,
think I remember before I finally turned my life over to the Lord and said, yeah, I'll do your will. I
yep,
had these things in my head of like, no, I need to be able to be in control of, my relationship, of what I do for fun, of my job. Well, eventually I'll get to God.
yep,
But it was very
exactly,
much like, no, I think I got this. And
exactly.
when all those were kind of stripped of me, it's like, okay, I don't know what to do anymore. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And
Yeah.
so that leads me to now the current plan for happiness, which for me is really trying to do God's will and then letting all the things that I want, right, come as an effect of I'm doing what you literally planted me on this earth to do. And no doubt it's working out. And that's why I think people have seen it. They can feel it. You've seen it. You felt it.
Yeah.
I've always been a great person, but it's like, oh, there's another level that's been unlocked. And that's how I've been able to achieve it. It's because I've finally put myself in the spot where going hard after use me, God, every day, however you can. And that doesn't mean I don't make mistakes. There's no doubt there's still like, oops, misstep here, misstep there. But that's where, having a great community and leadership comes in to just keep course correcting. So that's been the way I've really taken off this last year. And now I'm really passionate about helping others to see that you can have all the things you want in your life. Um, and even more so when you get to this point.
So you say you were a good person, right?
I felt like it, yes.
Now you're at a different level. What shifted in you to get from like, yeah, it was good. Like what do you mean by I was a good person then?
Yep.
What's the difference between that and where you are today?
My focus. And what I mean by that is like we look back at the last couple of years. It's not that I wasn't doing anything, you know. I've joined some leadership opportunities at church. I have been focused on investing in other people, but my focus, or really actually comes down to moral code. I should adjust that. My moral code wasn't God. It was my marriage, or what I thought I could have as a
Okay.
marriage.
Yeah.
When I finally, adjusted my moral code, that is what has helped let everything else fall into place, because God wants us to be happy. He wants us to have these things we want. So naturally, as I think a result of really putting God at the top of the moral code, and kind of letting everything, my operation, or how I operate, is being done through how would God lead me, or what would God do? It's almost
Yeah.
like a cool. You're doing what you're supposed to do. I'm going to facilitate you towards these things, these desires that you have, in the right way, the right and just way.
Yeah, that's something where a lot of us in our community is learning right now, a lot of like how God accomplishes whatever he's set out to accomplish. He's got this plan, and how does he accomplish that is what we would say his will is. And a big part of that is God doesn't need us to exist, right? He is self-sufficient, but he does need us for his plan to work, because his plan is this eternity with a group of people who are in fellowship with him, growing, and a righteous group of people who are made up of unique cells. So he needs us to accomplish what he wants. And it's amazing because it actually it's the exact thing we need from him in order to get what we want. It's like if we just follow God's lead and say, okay, because what God does is he gives up control. Like he is now in a state of response, right? He's right and just. He moves in response to us. We're in a position where we can do the same thing. And that's what I'm hearing. Like really at the root of your story is like, okay, there are these things I want, these desires that have been placed in my heart. These are good desires. The issue is me trying to get them the way I think I should get them. And if we just follow God's example and give up control over what we want, focus on helping him get what he wants, he'll give us what we want in response. So it is this really great interdependence that we're meant to have with God, and he's definitely right and just to accomplish it. So man, I'd love to hear a little bit more about what it was like. I know 2019, that's interesting because a lot of people, especially because you've been pivotal in introducing some other young people to our community, and a lot of them were people who were crashing in 2000, right? Having their breaking points a year after you, reaching out for help because of the stress of the pandemic, the lockdown. You were ahead of the curve in that. Maybe it was God setting you up to be prepared to be able to help these people that would need your help when the world is in a pretty
100%.
tragic position. So what was it like for you to not only in like can you paint the clearer picture of what it was like to hit that bottom, what you would want other people to do in a similar situation today, and then what was it like when all of a sudden you started meeting these other young people who were in a similar situation as you, and you now are this person who can show them the light?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I was at that bottom, I didn't know God, and what I would want to tell somebody is, that God, I think I felt like he wasn't there. I actually questioned, like, why would you do this to me? I thought you were God. Like, why would you take this from me? I didn't understand that really we're being moved where we need to be. So that's a perspective I would try to offer to somebody is this situation is, you're at rock bottom. This really does suck. But how could this be setting you up for what's next? So I think that's now what I would try to help people see, because I didn't know that I saw it, but there's a journal entry that I always share at least once a year from that, pretty much that same day, that night, where I talked about how I didn't want to let this, not let me be who I was supposed to be. And
Right.
looking back, I feel like in my heart I knew that it would all work out in the end, that it's going to be okay. But obviously, in the moment, you're devastated and you're reeling in the emotions and everything. So that's the perspective I would try to offer somebody is, no doubt, this is sucks. It's terrible. Something's been taken from you, all these things, but how could this set you up for what could be next for you down the line?
Paint a little silver lining on the whatever the crappy situation they're currently in.
Exactly. And growing up, I always told people, you know, I want people to know that the light at the end of the tunnel is not always a train. It's not always a train. You know, that's your way out. That's your way. That's how you're going to get to your next thing. So
Yeah.
that's what I would offer. And then regarding like that next year, again, I didn't even really know it, but now I've got retrospect. I can look back and see how it all worked out. But I'd gone through that experience and essentially had the tutelage of here's how to live life, really how to live life. And when I was meeting all of these really young folks who were sharing similar stories, it's like, wow, like I've been in your shoes before. I might just have some information and somebody who could help you further along. And that's actually one of my kind of life tenets. Someone's like, what do you like to do? My high level answer would be like, well, I love connecting people to their next life changing experience through either information or other people. So that's what I was doing in 2020 when I really had, that was my first greatest summer ever. Now we're in the second, now we're in the new greatest summer ever. But
Wait, hold on a minute. The first greatest summer of your life was 2020.
yes, 2020.
Make sense of that for me. I don't get it.
Yep.
Like, cause remember, this is like lockdown almost.
Yep.
Like lockdown's still on. Like,
Yep. That's right. That's right. And it's funny you mention that because a lot of people do share like, oh, that was a terrible time. Like
yeah,
that was a baller time for me. And the reason was because I had always treated summers as the growth season, because summer was usually when you're not in classes. You might still be working, but you know, it's a different season. The vibe is different. People are more energetic, they're happier, etc. But for me, it gave me 3 months to upskill into the next thing I wanted to do for the next year. So that was one part of it. But in this case, because I had just gotten done, you know, being mentored by John and learning how to live life, now it was, oh, I'm going to upskill and I'm looking for people who want to do the same thing.
yeah,
So that was a huge reason why that was the best summer ever, because I was growing at, you know, my professional work. I was doing an internship. I was living in this Airbnb with strangers who I didn't know I was doing this, but I was evangelizing them.
yeah.
You know, there was like 5 different strangers that summer. They were rotating in and out of the house. I was sharing them uniqueness. Hey, oh, you have some life woes here. Why don't you check this out? And oh, you got some professional issues here. Why don't you try this out? And I was just turned 21, so they're looking at me like, how does this kid know this stuff? You know? And then on top of that, I had a goal that summer to connect with at least 75 new people that I hadn't met. And within that goal, I broke down real estate professionals, finance, accounting, business, and then other students that I went to school with. Now, the other students part is really the money shot here, because the other students I had met is how I got connected to, you know, now we call it the Indie Gang group.
Yeah.
So it was the best summer of my life. The first one, because I was doing, I think, all of the principles of growth we talk about and flowing. And I may not have had the words for it, but that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
You know, the world was my oyster. It wasn't bound by, oh, I got to go to school. And I was growing in things I wanted, making progress, and then helping others to do the same through the evangelism muscle and connecting them with this information. And in that, and it was like, wow, that was
So what were you doing?
game-changing.
So you have this group of guys now, guys and gals from University of Indiana,
Yep.
and you're all connecting and getting to know each other, and these are all like-minded people who also want to grow. What were you doing with each other? It's like because the, you know, social interactions at the point were pretty limited on what we were capable of as a country even. So what was it that you were doing with these people to help them to connect, to grow as as friends?
That's a good point. I think I had mastered the art of networking at a young age, and I was still trial and erroring it. But that's really how it started. Um, for the initial connector, Eric Weiss, for him it was, hey, like we had interaction like 2 years ago or something, and I'm on a mission to connect with people from our school that why aren't we connecting? We go to the same school. And he was one person that responded, and same for Israel, same thing. And for them, the reason I think they gave me the time of day that summer is because I had planted a seed unknowingly during their freshman year of college. I was serving them chicken tenders at the dining hall. And I had that same energy of just trying to spread good vibes and connect with people. And I don't think they were used to it. So it always stuck with them enough to where 2 years later, they're like, okay, yeah, he might know some stuff. He's a little further down the line than we are. Let's give him time of day. And then there was a lot of following up. I think a lot of people have an initial conversation and it drops dead. Even if it was a bad conversation, I was very intentional with every 2 weeks, I'm going to reach out to these people again and just keep it going. That helped get to the point where when we got back to college that next semester, we started meeting in person for just hanging out over dinner, lots of sushi. Lots of sushi was eaten and lots of Indian food.
Nice.
And through that, I'm figuring out, oh, now we're getting to the meat of some of the life woes you've gone through or are going through. Or in some cases, what they were telling me they were going to go through. And these were cues for me to connect them with at the time, John.
Yeah.
And
And
through
that's
that,
connecting
then,
power.
they had other people they were talking to about it. And it was enough now where we've got a group of 5 of us that have really been running together since 2020.
Man, that's incredible. So, okay, help me understand this summer focus that you tend to have. Where'd you learn? Because I'll tell you, I mean, you may know this now, being a part of the Music of Life Church community. As far back as 2007, when this thing started in a home, a lot of us had been associated with another church that when their summer, they were doing really well, really helping people, had a lot of like discipleship style programs going on, growing in quantity as well as a result of the growing in quality. And all of that hit a wall and started diminishing the growth the minute the pastor said we're taking the summer off. And what we did, even as a home church, and now we still do to this day as Music of Life Church, a church that's made up of multiple churches now, as we say we don't take the summer off. And in fact, we're really encouraging of people to set summer goals. What do you want to accomplish over the summer? And even more so, like, why not? If everyone else is going to take the summer off, let's not only not take the summer off, but why not crank it up to 11, right? Because with everybody else just relaxing, there's still people who need help. And that might be an opportunity for us to be able to make even a greater impact, because there's like a gap now in the amount of resources people have. That was taught to me when I was 25. Man, I'll tell you, before then, I wasn't setting summer goals for myself. I was taking the summer off. But you're still like 20 years old, like in the story. Where did this come from? Who taught you this? Was this something you always did? Man, I'm really impressed by that.
Yeah. I think you answered for me in your answer, but for me it didn't come from church. It came from really business, because I had always had this vision that either I was going to go into politics or business. And then I met John and he was like, you should probably really pick one and get good at that. And I was like,
Nice.
you know what? I'll do business, because this whole politics thing, I don't think I would want to do it as good as I could have been. And what I had seen through my own experiences, because I didn't set myself up very well to go to college to begin with, I took a really lazy approach, believe it or not. I took a lazy approach to school. I didn't understand. It was just a hurdle. I felt like it should be fun. So
Okay.
naturally, I would go to school and be like, this is boring. As a result, I had seen, okay, I'm going to have to do a lot of extra legwork to get the internship, to get the job, 3 to 4 years down the line. And so, to your point, while everybody else was, I'm taking the summer off, relaxing, I'm chilling, etc., I was finding ways, hey, this is a gold mine for all the professionals who love to invest in the young kids, who want to teach us the ways to find these kind of hidden opportunities so that when I would come back to school, you know, um, summer of 2019, I didn't even have an internship, but because of that growth focus, I'd come back to school the next semester. Everyone else, even those who had internships, like, oh, what'd you work on? Like, oh, like, my spreadsheet project at work. It's like, oh, cool. Here's what I
Yeah.
did, and I learned more in life than you did at this internship. I think that's really where I learned it, and because I saw it work, it's like, oh yeah, like you said, when others turn it down, we turn it up so we can be that much more prepared. And honestly, it was my way to over prepare for knowing that when I was in school, I wasn't going to have that time because we had to do the classwork and coursework. So it was twofold. I knew I'd get more out of it, but also selfishly, I was trying to front load what I would have wanted to spend time on during the normal semester. So I feel like that's
Nice.
how I learned it.
Man, it's really impressive and I honestly have a hard time even imagining you being somebody who took the lazy approach to anything with how much passion and energy you have these days and just desire for growth. But so your journey started with meeting John through Colin Stevenson, which was really the flow cess track, right? So this is the model for the mind and the brain. It's non-religious. It's, very scientific. And now you're very involved in church. So I'd love to hear, can you share what the journey was for you to go from the flow cess side of things to diving in with your whole heart into, loving the Lord, helping other people understand who God is, being involved in a church, being a leader in a church. What was that like? What was that journey like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Joel. Great question. So, 2019 to 2020 was was it called secular, where it's not religious, or does that
Yeah,
know?
that's the right word. Yep.
So those were the secular years where it's like, this information is clearly working for me. I want to know where this crazy old man figured it out because I want to use this. Essentially, it was like, this is what I've been looking for, and you have it.
Yeah.
Then he, revealed to me that it was from the Bible, and I was like mind blown. You
So your
know,
first response was like that, like that's cool,
yes, it was
or
like,
just surprised?
holy cow, like that's what I want more of.
Okay.
It wasn't like, oh no, I can't, oh darn it, oh
Yeah.
man, it's from the Bible. What? If anything, it was finally like somebody gets it.
All right.
I didn't have the like understanding because I wasn't really raised in Christianity like that, and I had turned a blind eye, if you will, because I felt like, oh well, Christianity is kind of weird, and if Christianity is real, then so is everything else. And well, there's some truth to that too. But anyhow, basically, I was like uber agnostic slash atheist, didn't really
Okay.
know, but I wasn't putting in a lot of effort. For example, people would say, because I'd ask like, well, why do you believe? And they would share their faith through experience, right? And so I would go, huh, well, I haven't had that experience, so therefore, God's not real.
All right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Which is like, okay. It's funny looking back. I'm like, I didn't know the understanding part was
Right.
available, right? So that was 2019, 2020. 2021, I had gone through restoration because I had just gotten done slaving away at this job where I was trying to work my plan to become a CEO by doing whatever it took to the point where, I went from super growth, like Dom is rising star, to I'm just a robot. I
Okay.
just went to work. I shut
Yeah.
out family, friends, the little bit of church friends I had at the time. John.
Yeah.
I think I was going through a man course at the time that I deprioritized because, again, everything was revolved around work, 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 work.
Yeah.
So I went through restoration in 2021 because I realized, like, wow, I'm in a massive hole, clearly. And I shared the story before at the restoration team party where it was like I had this information, but I actually didn't know how to bear my burden. I didn't. If I did, probably wouldn't have gone through what I did, but I didn't. And it was to the point where I started blaming people for my situation. Just
Okay.
like, sure, they may have had some inspiration for where I was, but it wasn't their fault. And that was where I was going wrong. I think I put myself in a really big hole from a justice perspective because instead of taking ownership, I was blaming other people for what was happening. I was like, no, I'm in this hole because you made me do this. And
So
then,
so you sign up for restoration. Do you remember even why you did that? Was it just another thing to tick off a box, or was it like you were at a point you really were looking for some spiritual guidance?
probably spiritual guidance underlyingly, but really what it was for me was I'm in a really deep hole. I'm a naturally happy guy that feels like depressed.
Yeah.
But of course, I would never say that because depression wasn't a thing in my vocabulary, right? So it's like something is wrong here, you know.
Yeah,
I
honestly, I had a deep depression myself back when I was in my early 20s, and at the time I never would have said I was depressed either though.
Yep,
I'm fine.
exactly,
I'm fine.
exactly.
I'm fine. But now I look back, it's like, yeah, dude, you were, closing yourself off in the basement watching
Yep,
TV all day by yourself and then going out and drinking at night. You were depressed.
exactly, exactly. And that was what I was doing. Work all day. If I had time, drink or smoke with friends, and then repeat the next day. It's like this is not a really good cycle.
Right.
So I knew restoration was going to be my next like growth thing, but also I needed help. And my biggest takeaway from restoration at that time was what I was sharing, where it's like it was not their fault. That's part of bearing your burden. You have to take ownership. Yes, you have bosses in your life sometimes who will give you a cause, but you don't have to take that cause. And I did not know that I could say no.
Right.
But again, what was driving me? Well, if I say yes, I might become a CEO by 23. You know what I mean? So going through restoration helped me to see, like, okay. And through restoration, I was getting kind of the light nugget, light doctrine of, oh, okay, here's literal biblical support for these principles that I've been using through flow sets all this time, anyways.
Yeah.
That combined with having at the time two really awesome dudes who were pouring into me, Patrick and Blair, who are part of our community as well. Without them, I would have never even came to church because while I was going through restoration and this experience, they were supporting me the whole time. And even though I'm sure they were banging their head against the wall, like, dude, we literally tried to help you, but you just don't want to listen. Because looking back, there were so many times that they unconsciously confronted me, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
So kudos to them. I joined Restoration due to their help, and then they would invite me to church, which at the time I was still like, kind of seems weird, but why not? You know,
You lived
kind of
in
like
Indiana though, right?
lived in Indiana. Yep,
You still do.
still do.
And it's a how many hour drive to where we were at in Wisconsin?
6 with traffic, 7 depending on how far north.
Okay. And so they invited you to church.
Yep.
Was like saying, hey, do you want to take half a day and drive to northeastern Wisconsin?
It started with the virtual service.
Yeah. Okay.
Wednesday night service. But you bring up a good point because they also had come to visit at some point during
Oh,
the
really?
whole time. Yep.
That's big, huh?
Exactly. And I forget that because it's like, oh, that was just normal.
That must mean a lot, huh? They came all the way into Indiana to
Yep.
pour into you and to love on you. That's great.
Yep. Exactly. And so things like that, right? They were providing refuge to
Yeah.
me, helped to when they were like, hey, man, you want to come check out this Wednesday night? While I'm like, I don't really know church. I'm like, why not? And I remember one of my first Wednesday nights, it was another one of those experiences where I was like, wow, like these people get it. Like
Yeah.
this is church.
Yeah.
Not what I was used to, which is a lot of platituding and you just kind of popcorn reading the scriptures without tying the stories together or giving, good causes. And I also remember, funnily, I don't know if this is accurate. I may have just planted this, but I distinctly remember seeing someone with like wine or beer. And I was like, wait, I thought we weren't allowed to do that.
Yeah.
And someone was like, show me in the Bible where it says we're not allowed to drink. I'm like,
Yeah.
what? It's like, okay, I can get behind this. Yeah, this is my kind of church. So seeing that, I think it showed me that this is a community that knew how to focus on like right and just causes and not get distracted by the what's. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, I didn't like know this at that time, but that's what I was feeling, and that's what drew me to the community. And it started with the Wednesday night, which is why I try to promote it all the time because it's such a safe way to get even a little exposure back to like church,
Yeah.
like you would never experience before. I've not been to this day to another church that, unless it's a $40 entry ticket to a man night, that has everybody share on an answer from a really good cause. It's almost like a mini TED Talk that you can focus on in that week. And so that stuff was like, this is what I've been looking for. This is
Yeah.
why I was a church hopper when I was younger, trying to find places and feeling like, they're not really getting it. Like music was good, but they're not really getting it.
Yeah.
Music was bad, but they're not really getting it. When I came to Musical Life Church, it was just like when I met John the first time. It was like, these people get it.
Yeah.
Not to say we aren't growing in our own ways, by the way, for anyone listening to this. And that was the beauty for me of Music of Life Church. I was seeing that they got it and that they were still growing. And that was how I felt like I was living my life. And then,
So you
we've got
see,
really
meet a
awesome
whole
leaders.
group of people doing the same thing. So yeah, these people get it. I think I understand what you mean by that. Part of these people getting it means they're growing. Not that these people aren't making mistakes or these people are doing everything right. It's they're growth minded. They want to be involved in each other's lives. They're being real. And, that's where I think it even goes back to why you chose business over politics. Is politics, it would have been really hard for you to just be yourself, right? So much of being a politician is masking yourself, where I don't see that in you, man. I see you being somebody who's like, I'm just going to be myself. And that's my ticket to success, right?
Absolutely.
So what was it like then? Wednesday nights are virtual. They still are, even though we meet in person again. After, we went virtual after the pandemic for a while, and still we're really successful as a community because of how involved we are with each other throughout the week. Music Life Church is not made or broken on a Sunday, and so that's great. And it's still Wednesday nights are still one of the great evangelistic outreaches we have because it is really easy to come to. I love how you said it's kind of like a mini TED Talk every week where we get to discuss and engage over what was taught for, under 10 minutes. What was it like though? Like when you came to your first in-person service, what was that experience like walking into the room with these people that you say got it?
Yeah. I think, well, for me, I had a lot of fun because thankfully some folks had already been spreading the news of Dom's arrival. So, when I came, refuge to the max, lots of excitement, lots of energy, lots of, oh, like, that's who you are. We've
Yeah.
heard a lot about you, finally. And a lot of care, like care comes to mind. There's a lot of people who would let me stay with them, still do, but in the early phases, let me stay with them. And then every time I'd come, the focus, our church is really good at, hey, we love you guys, but we got some new people who want some investments, all hands on them, which is what I think people need to feel loved and cared for, because that's what a lot of us are missing in life, especially with church. So that was my experience, and it felt really welcoming. It didn't feel like I don't belong here. I felt right at home.
Yeah. So you'd already been coming to service. People knew who you were. John had been talking about you because you were a spitfire of a guy and you were already doing a bunch of evangelistic work. But do you remember the service? Do you remember like the first actual like Sunday service you were at? Or is there some event or something you came to that really impacted you?
I think the first service I came to was a winter breakfast, actually.
Oh,
It was a
all right.
winter breakfast, I want to say in 2020. Yeah, it was 2022.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. And I actually think, though, like that was a great service, but I actually think what really did it for me was Rob's wedding the next month, I think. Rob and Christina's
Ah,
wedding. Because that
yeah.
was
We
just
had a
like,
couple there's been a few weddings now over the last 5 or so years where they tend to be Music of Life Church events, right? Because it's pretty much our community there, and then usually some relatives and family members from. But yeah, I remember that. So what was that? What was that like?
For me, that was like what we talk about on JGL, where we're all just flowing, having a great time, and that experience was like okay, I'm gonna keep coming up here because this place is awesome, you
Yeah,
know. But each time I would come visit, even for the first service I went to, and then all the events like the weddings and just hanging out and whatnot, I would leave feeling like holy cow, like this is it.
yeah,
Now I know what to call it, right? It's heaven on earth. That's what I call it now. That's what we as a community can get to experience.
yeah,
And that's what kept driving me back all these years, and now, now even more so now.
yeah. I know, and it is. I mean, a lot of it comes down to being with a group. It is like what I described God's eternal plan, right? A group of righteous people who are unique, who know who they are, who are growing, who are in fellowship with one another and with God. And that's stuff we can be doing now. And I think that's what Music Life Church has really grabbed a hold of. And that's why I'm wanting people on this show who have great stories that, we can pull these truths from those stories and get the truth out, right? So we talked a little bit about your first greatest summer ever. Now we're what, 1/3 through what you've deemed as your now new greatest summer ever. Why is this your greatest summer ever, Dom?
And it's like the 2020 summer on steroids. And I think
Okay.
it's because we go back to what I shared on, like, how do you use your time during the summer, and now my focus isn't just purely on business. Part of in April, I had this moment. I felt like God was talking to me, and I realized, like, wow, I actually treat work like church, where it's you put everything in, you invest, you've got all the right causes of why you want to do it and what you're going to get out of the future, etc. And for me, I realized, what would it look like if I treated church that way? And since then, it's like, because that, I feel like God was telling me, like, that's what you're supposed to be doing, Dom.
Oh
You know,
man,
you've
that
treated work like church, now treat church like church. And that is how I think I've been able to have the greatest summer of my entire life. And
I can see it.
comes down
When
to,
when when a need is presented, you tend to be the first one to jump in. If not the first, you're jumping in to say I'll help, no matter what it is, across the board. It's
yep,
really inspiring. That man, there's that part of your story really strikes a chord in me because I worked at Starbucks for years, and there was a time period where I was working there full time while also being an associate pastor at Music of Life Church, and then eventually senior pastor for a while too. And I remember wondering, like, when am I going to be able to quit this job and just put my focus on the church? And I remember Jonathan, who some of my friends at the time lived very close to the Starbucks I worked at, so they'd come visit me. I'm not kidding. Like every shift I worked, I'd have friends coming in to talk to me during work, and they saw me interact with the employees, and I was a supervisor, so I was a leader at Starbucks, and they saw how I treated the people there, and they saw how I'd handle them when they had, if somebody would have a wedding or a baby or a funeral or someone gets sick, and the care, Jonathan would see how I'm caring for these people that I'm working with at Starbucks. And one day he asked me, he's like, why don't you treat the people of Music Life Church as good as you do the Starbucks employees? And it's like, I do. What do you mean? And it's like, it's like,
yep,
no.
yep,
Jonathan would know. Like, he's going to see that. He's one of the most caring men I've ever met. But that was a game changer for me. And that's when he encouraged me, treat these people like, first, like, treat these people at Starbucks like they're your sheep, and treat the people at Music of Life Church like you treat the people at Starbucks. And it leveled me up at work because I was more intentional about how I was caring for them. And it leveled me up at the church because now all of a sudden I'm like, I think what it was is that the church, I had this really big sense of familiarity with all these people. And sometimes that familiarity can cause us to relax in how we interact, right? To ratchet
Yep.
back instead of pouring into more, right? And that gave me the mindset switch I needed to really start pouring into Musical Life Church at a higher level. I think it was within a year I was able to quit Starbucks and I was able to get into full time with the church. And it really was that mindset switch where it's like, man, I love that part of your story, man. So final thoughts. You're in the best summer of your life. You're taking on the world, Dom. You're changing the world. I see a light shine through you in every person you interact with. It's really inspiring. What do you want for people?
I want everybody to know that they do have the power to change the world, truly. And there's a song that I would love people to listen to. It's called "Change My Clothes," and that song has it's my new favorite song of the summer because it talks about that right there.
By who?
It's by Alec Benjamin,
Okay.
or Dream, and I think the song resonates with me so much because I believe that in myself. I always have, but I've experienced a lot of people, due to a variety of reasons, they don't believe in that. But what if they did? What if they did believe that they can change the world? And imagine how that would change how they operate and everything. So that's what I want people to know and believe in their hearts. It's going to look different for everybody how you're going to do that.
Right.
I'm no CEO, but no doubt I'm a world changer.
Yeah.
Dr. Joel is no, Benny Hinn level evangelist yet, but no
No.
doubt he's got the same impact and effect that, those views have as well. So I want everybody to know that we can change the world in our own unique way. And that's what life is for. That's what we're supposed to be
Yeah.
figuring out.
I love it, man. Thanks for inspiring me again. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having
Definitely
me.
have to have you back, man. Keep changing the world.
You don't have to tell me twice, Dr. Joel. Thank you. Thank you for all you do.
Yeah, man. All right. I'll talk to you later. Told you it was inspiring. Thanks to Dom for being on the show. Definitely will have him on again in the future, as I will some of the people that he has made major life-changing impact that led to transformation in their own lives. Let's unpack some of Dom's story and unlock some of the truth within. Early on, he talked about how he had this plan for marriage, how he thought it was the right plan, and he found out otherwise. One of the things that really is the foundational principles as it relates to having a marriage that is lasting, a marriage that is profitable and enjoyable, and a marriage that is honoring of God, comes down to the principles of husbanding and husbandry. So a lot of people think the word husband just means like the male in a marriage contract or relationship. But that word actually means worker of the land. I think of a husband as a farmer. So really the way a marriage is meant to be is the man is a husband or a husbandman who works the land and who makes or who brings cherishing warmth and nourishing truth, working the land, brings it to the land in order to help the land be able to grow and create from it whatever it was designed to create. So a farmer who's an expert at apple orchards is not going to work very well in an orange orchard, right? So it is not about the farmer making what he wants out of the land. It's about the farmer making out of the land or providing for the land what it needs in order for it to flourish in the way it was best designed. That's really the picture of a husband and a wife. The man is the worker of the land. The wife is the creative being that provides the fruit, and that is really bringing the qualities of nourishment to the people and places around her. So I just want to touch on a couple topics involving husbanding and husbandry that have been really misunderstood and misapplied and even twisted by the church over the years. First, it comes down to leadership. So if the husband is supposed to be the leader of this union, who benefits? The wife is supposed to benefit. A leader is someone who facilitates the purpose and progress of others, not the purpose and progress of themselves at others' expense. A leader isn't somebody who gets to just tell people what to do and they do it. A leader isn't somebody who gets all these perks and benefits off of other people. A leader serves. And that's what a husband is supposed to do for his wife, is serve her. And for those of you who've been in marriages where the man has not been doing that, it's not the institute of marriage's fault. It's not God's fault. It's the arrangement you had set up. When the man is being a boy or being a boss, that's not a reflection on the way marriage ought to be. It's a reflection on him. The other thing I like to address is this idea of submitting. This is something a lot of men have used, particularly in the church, to get what they want off of their wives. The idea or the concept of submitting is meant to be a benefit to the wife. So she submits to the husband's leadership, knowing that from a position of superiority, she's choosing to submit her will to him, trusting that the advice, the counsel, the direction he gives her is going to be for her benefit. So there's two questions that we always give wives that they have every right to ask their husbands at any time they want. One is, how is what you're telling me to do for my benefit? And two, how is what you're telling me to do from God? You can ask those questions of your husband at any time. And it is meant to be for your benefit. So that's a really brief explanation of how, if we embrace the principles of husbanding and husbandry and really understand what leadership and submission is meant for and who benefits in the short term, makes marriage a lot more profitable right from the start. Dom also talked about these plans for happiness. He referred to he used some of this terminology like this 80 focus. I just want to point you to Flowsess. Some of the terms he was using as it relates to Flowsess is terms that Flowsess uses as it relates to their model for the mind and the brain. So if you want more information on the model for the mind and the brain, go to flowsys.com and you can find out the only non-contradictory model for the mind and the brain there, and seek out more information from there if you'd like. Finally, I want to talk about this breaking process. So Dom went through it. You'll be able, once I explain it, you'll be able to see really through his story and through some of the examples he gave how this actually was manifested through his own life. But I see the breaking process in three parts. And this is covered in Modeling God's Wills, which you can find at modelinggod.com. But here's a little excerpt that I'll share with you now. So this three-part process of breaking really starts with the first step of God pushing the person to get that person to admit he or she is wrong. It's essentially God saying to a person, do you admit you are wrong? Well, I hope you know the right answer to that. The right answer to do you admit you are wrong is yes, I am wrong. Now, the second step is really a decision God is going to push that person towards for their benefit, really getting to the point of, will you rely on me completely? And it's essentially God asking, do you admit you need to rely on me completely? So this is another level up, right? Or another level deeper, if you will, of breaking, because it's not just enough to admit you're wrong. You also need to choose, well, what's the right path? And this is really the decision for a person to admit, not only am I wrong, but I need to rely completely on God. It's his will and his word that is going to be the thing that'll get me through this breaking process, and really choosing him, not just not choosing me, but choosing him. And the third step, the third decision, is really the most brutal. God is trying to find out if the person trusts him completely. So essentially, God asks the person if they will follow him, regardless of whether or not God takes everything from that person. So you can imagine it being done through a series of questions where God is asking, will you follow me if I take away your job? Will you follow me if you take away, or if I take away your money? Will you follow me if I take away your friends, your kids, your spouse? And notice the terms used in these questions. Will you follow me if I take away? Not will you follow me if you lose your job, if you lose your money, if you lose your friends, family, kids, spouse. But if I take them away from you, really have to trust God completely that if he took those things away from you, it would be for your long-term best interest and it would be right and just. A person who relies and completely trusts God would still follow him, even if God took those things. But the way to look at it is this: you occupy a specific space. Everything else in your life occupies space around you. So God's goal is to rebuild you into something else, into the person he meant you to be. And you will most likely occupy a new space through that transformation. So there's stress that's caused there, and God really needs to know before he begins the process of making you into exactly who you were made to be, if you are completely trusting him. And ultimately then too, how much he can trust you. So thanks for listening today. That's it on Unlocked. Thanks again to Dom for joining me. I'm Dr. Joel Swakowski. You can find Dom on Facebook. You can find him on Instagram. You can even email him at dkv10mis@gmail.com. You can find him on Discord at domdabomb3190. Also, check out flowcess.com. Check out musicoflifechurch.com. You can get Model for the Mind and the Brain at Flowcess. You can get a restoration information and enrollment at musicoflifechurch.com. And I'll also have a link in the caption, in the description of wherever you're listening or watching, to the song that Dom recommended by Alex, Benjamin, and Dream, the song called Change My Clothes. Listen, maybe you'll learn something. If anything, you'll learn more about Dom and what he's passionate about. So yeah, go check out these resources. Reach out to Dom if you have any more questions. But thank you for listening. Keep seeking truth. Keep living it out. We'll see you next time.